This is called Ninja Buyer Negotiations. Okay, and ninja is either a person skilled in the Japanese art of jitsu or a person who excels in a particular skill or activity. We're going to go.
Rob, can you just make the print a little bit bigger so we can read it?
How's that?
That's better. Yeah, much better.
So we're not taking jujitsu courses here. We're talking about a skilled person who excels in an activity. And the techniques to get your buyers offers accepted in this low inventory environment. Step one, which is absolutely critical, and it's to build trust and a high level of rapport with your buyers. Okay, and embedded in that statement is making sure that you have capable buyers. Okay, I've spoken to some people who are, looking to go FHA, and if they're bidding in a situation where we're going above appraised value, can they realistically compete where people are waiving part of an appraisal? Okay, so build trust and have rapport with your clients. Talk about what possibilities they can do. Second thing is, share with your buyers current market conditions. I'm sure everybody shares comps with their clients. There's anybody on here that doesn't share the comparable sales with your client? Okay, I'm going to say that's a no, but if you share comps, I think we also need to share characteristics of the market, the behavioral characteristics, so we can compete more effectively. I've created a spreadsheet. Robert, you'll be surprised at that. But my spreadsheet here is really simple. I like to download the entire MLS, and it's a little bit too complicated to do. So I've made this very basic. If you're in the GSMLS, it's super duper simple. But most of the offers that I see, us being in ultra competitive situations, are new to the market properties. Would you agree with that, Robert?
Yeah.
So I took Montclair and I took Union, and I wanted to look at the behavior of how those listings act. Okay, so if somebody was looking to buy a home in Montclair and Union at the same time, do you think their bidding strategy would be the same, or do you think we'd have to alter it? Anybody?
Absolutely not. Completely different, two different markets.
Okay, yep. And they're probably 3 to 8 miles away, right? But
and also different public, different buyers, different category of buyers.
Yep. Now, who's speaking? I don't recognize the voice. Is that Sarah?
No, this is Claudia from Gothenburg.
Oh, Claudia, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good morning.
Welcome to our mastermind. So yes, so they're very different. So I went into the MLS here, and well, actually, let me. So I prepared these statistics here. I prepared these statistics here, and they're rather easy to do by going into the MLS. Anybody feel like you can do this in less than 5 minutes? Any takers? Robert?
Yeah.
So this is simply a CMA with the properties on the market for under 15 days, copied and pasted onto this sheet. And if I go here, when I copy and paste it, this is what it looks like. Okay. And I went through it and I said, some of these things are irrelevant. Like, does a buyer care about the MLS number?
No.
Does a buyer care how many photos are up on it?
No.
When you're looking at how property behaves, do they care about? Do they care about? Let me, we're in the torture echo chamber there, folks. Do they care about when they're looking at, do they care about if it's 0.32 or 0.42 acres when they're looking at how to bid? Do they care about whether it's 3 or 4 bedrooms? Probably not. They're just looking at how homes are behaving in a particular price range. So I've dumbed that information down to several columns, which is status, town, address, list price, close date, sold price, difference, and days on market. Does that make sense? So if I have somebody looking to buy in Montclair at homes that were listed between 525 and 575, first of all, that person on average needs to be prepared to pay 650. If I have somebody in Union looking in the exact same price range, they can expect to pay 580. So if you have a 525 to 575 buyer and they're looking in Union, you might tell them that you know, you can go up to 565 or 570 based upon the averages. And in Montclair, you probably have to look, 50 to 100,000 less, because that's how the market behaves. Let's see, Union under 15 days on market is selling for an average of 4.87 above the ask price. And I would even go in and I would probably say that this one here that sold for a discount and this one that sold without having a day on the market are probably outliers, because they probably had the buyer tied up if it was 0 days on market. And this one that went for 2.75 below, I would be open about maybe removing it and sharing with a client that if I did that.
Rob, how did you figure out the average? Does that automatically do it? This program automatically do an average?
So what I did is I go on here. That's a great question. I go on here and I go to the functions. I do average.
Oh.
And then I
What
just
was that? On the that's just the Excel sheet, right?
yeah. So the report that comes from the MLS looks like this. So I can go to,
Right.
I'll just show everybody just how simple it is. So I went Union County, Union Township, ask list price 525 to 575. I did a search, 46 records. Here it's all over the place. I sorted by days on market. I took all the homes under 15 days on market. Or you can take whatever numbers that you want. And I'm sure all the different MLSs have different tricks to getting the data. So there's 17 properties. I go to view print. I go to client CMA. I go to view. Here it is. And I just copy the data like this. And then I put it onto the spreadsheet. I cut and paste.
Yeah, your MLS is a little different than ours down here in Florida, but
Ron, for the Florida team, if you go onto the main page of your MLS, on the left-hand panel, there's actually a box with all market stats, and there's one icon that's called market stats, and you can do it specifically by county, by HOA, by city, and by zip code. And once you pull wherever you want to pull it from, then it gives you all the different segments, not something similar to what Rob is showing, but once you narrow it down, you can even go specifics into developments, and you can build a farm area based upon that.
So for this exercise, the two things I did have to customize, I went here and I put in the sold price divided by the list price minus 1 gives me the percentage it's going above ask. Okay. The sold price divide it by the list price, right? So if it sold for 550 and it was on for 539, if I don't subtract the 1, it's going to be 102, right? But I think people can relate better to how much it's going above the ask price. So I subtract the 1 to give me the difference. So I have 2 of them that went 40% over, 2 that were essentially 20, a 14, 11, 13, and 1, 2%, right? So if I were to be working with a client, let me just go back to here. I'm working with a client, a buyer that's looking to purchase a home in Montclair. I'm going to share that information, and I might open up the dialogue saying, hey, Fazia, I'm glad that you like this home. I hope you don't mind if I did some research for your benefit. Here's a chart. It shows that on average, homes going under contract in 10 days or less sell for 20.55% over asking price. You may ask you, Fazia, and role play with me. How much do you like this home?
I'm in love with the home.
Okay. So, you know, if you and your partner want to buy this home, you know, what do you think we need to bid in order to be competitive or successful?
Because I love the home, I would come in at 60, probably over 60.
So you're going to bid more than 20% over. So if you understand how this conversation is going, I'm educating and asking instead of saying, you know, there's probably a lot of offers on this. Now, let me stop sharing for a second. So Gary Nagurka, how are you this morning?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. What's the average sales price in the areas that you do business?
Probably in the 600s.
600, and average commission is what, 12 to 15,000?
Probably.
Okay, so with a $12 to $15,000 potential, and I know how much you take care of your clients, Gary, would you be willing to make 3 to 5 phone calls before you made an offer?
Sure.
Okay, because what I'm going to give you a secret tip here that's not even on here, but I'll add it later. I would call some of the listing agents that were in the marketplace and had properties that sold in under a week. And I would ask them, you know, hey, Gary, or hey, Rusi, do you mind if I ask on Cold Pepper Road, how many offers did you have? Right? If you called 3 to 5 and one person said we had 19 offers, right? Would it be appropriate for you to share that, you know, I called a colleague of mine just to see how the activity was on a current under contract or one that recently closed, and he shared with me that they had 19 offers. Is that relevant data to share with your client?
Yeah, it's good to do that. It just depends on the price range that they're in, you know, where they need to bid. For instance, I have a buyer that's qualified up to 565, and we're looking in the acreage in Loxahatchee. So most of the sales in there are going to be in the higher 5s, lower 6s. So there's not enough room there for them to bid because they're only working with a limited amount of cash. So what your suggestion was to take them in areas that are less expensive than their budget, so they have the room to play. But again, when they want a certain area, you're stuck. And we've been at this dilemma for now over a month.
So Ron, and I'm going to give you credit for pointing out 2 things that I think are important. One is markets have characteristics and behaviors, right? Because you're telling me that in this market, you know, properties are going above ask and the overwhelming amount is in the high 5s to the 6s. And your client has a cap of 565?
That's what they're qualified for, and they're working with 120 grand. So my mortgage broker got them approved at that number with the cash to close and down payment. So we can't, we're looking at properties tomorrow in the high fours, lower fives. So we have a little bit of room if we need to go, but there's not much out there, and that's the area they want. So we're facing that dilemma.
So, you, in my opinion, we need to be, honest with our customers, let them know what they're up against, right?
Yeah.
And perhaps, and just perhaps, Ron, we can't help everybody. I mean, if you're certain that what they're looking for is unlikely to be found, it's a very lesser probability. But I found sometimes people can, get creative, and maybe one of the buyers has a 401k or has a pension that they could borrow against. There are different ways that you could look at how to address that, or maybe this is somebody that you're gonna have to invest a lot of time in, Ron, to get that deal done. But the two things that Ron's pointing out is A, markets leave clues and they have patterns of behavior. And then the second thing is, you need to, level up with your client and make sure that they know what they're up against. And if you work with them for 6 months and they don't successfully find a property, Ron, you know what my experience tells me? They might switch agents because they don't like the outcome, despite the fact that you're doing everything that you could do. And, maybe when they switch agents, they're now have a little bit more money to put down because we spent 6 months working with them and the other agent wins, just like an expired listing in years past.
I hope I don't have to be with them for 6 months. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. They're pretty loyal to me. I don't think they'll do that. I think it's just the main, they understand where their price range is at and the area that they're looking in. They understand. They're just hoping for the best, and so I've been sending them properties a little less than what they really should spend because they wanted to be up in the sixes, and it's just not going to happen. So, but I'm not going to, I'm not. My second, my other question to them was maybe find another area rather than the acreage. But they have, airboats, boats, trucks, cars, so they need the acreage. They need the land. So we're at that dilemma, but I don't
Wait a second, Ron. What do they have?
They have an airboat, they have a boat, they have 2 trucks and a car.
Maybe they can sell an airboat, one of the 2 boats, and then buy one when they can afford it.
I agree with you,
Ron. Just a hint, Ron. But anyway, you see the listening I'm having here, and maybe you'll upset them, but maybe that's what they need to do, and then they can repurchase that later on. So I'm suggesting that, if, Gary said a closing's worth 12 to 15 or more $1,000, maybe we call listing agents on similar properties to find out how many offers they had on their under contract or sold listings. Some won't, some will. You can then share that with your client saying, hey, called 5 of the properties. I spoke to 2 of the agents. Both of those properties had more than 10 offers on them, with one having 19. So if you really want to make an offer on this property, I just wanted to give you the information so you can prepare. Okay. When you call the listing agent, if your buyer wants to make an offer, you're going to find some way to build rapport, and a simple way is to give them a compliment, right? Like, hey, you did a nice job preparing that home for the market, or I've been seeing a lot of your listings in Parsippany. Congratulations. I admire the way you do business and look forward to working with you on this transaction. How about that?
sounds good.
Do most agents, you think, make this effort? I would say not. The old, just a general thank you when they pick up the phone. If you've been on some of these masterminds, people say, Rob, what are you thanking me for? I just want to thank you, Ron, for answering the phone. You have no idea how many people don't answer the phone. And if we wind up doing this deal together, I'll either answer my phone if I can, or I'll call you back promptly. Does that make you want to deal with me a little bit more, Ron, as a listing agent?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Hey, have you had many offers would be one probing question I would always ask. Some people will say, some won't. When you ask, have you had many offers? Let me, Linda Ciardi, are you able to unmute yourself? If you ask an agent, have you had many offers? How many of them you think will answer you honestly?
I don't know if it's honest, but they'll answer, They say, oh,
Probably.
I have 2 in hand, 3 might be coming in. We had a lot of showings. I anticipate more.
And if you say, if I asked you, Linda, do you mind sharing what your best offer is? Do you think most agents will tell that to me?
I have, and they won't. Well,
Right.
they're not supposed
Usually
to, right?
don't.
They're not
Yeah, they don't.
supposed to, but what if you did this, Linda? You have a listing for 549, right? Your client's looking to make an offer of 575. And if I said to you, hey, Linda, would it make any sense for me to submit a strong offer at 575?
I do that.
And what do
I do ask them that.
what do most agents say?
I believe that they're telling me the truth. They'll either say yes, that that might work because they're flexible with the closing date. If you have somebody that's flexible with the closing date because these people don't want a quick closing, different things might help. More down payment, different things like that.
So a lot of times they might say, no, we already have 2 offers above that. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah,
And then,
but I still do. I still put it in.
well, either that or you can go back to your client and say, hey, I've been working locally for a long time.
Right.
I know Colleen Stabinski. She does a lot of business in Rockaway. She had mentioned she has 2 offers higher. Do we want to consider maybe upping our offer a little bit?
I think
Right?
people
Because-
definitely understand that now. The market's crazy. You have to do it.
So that's a creative way to get that out of a seller. Does it make sense to write up an offer? What's the preferable closing date?
Yeah.
I put in here, this question usually gets the listing agent to proffer or say if they have any offers above that, or they might say, hey, we have 2 right in that ballpark. Hey,
Rob,
yeah, go ahead.
to piggyback on that, that's absolutely perfect because when I was looking for a property for my grandson, he saw the home that they loved. The agent told me they had 40 offers. Don't bother. I didn't bother. The home went under contract at 530,000, and my grandchildren would have paid 560. And they would have had the property if I had set it up like you said before.
Okay.
There you go.
That's why we're sharing ideas, Colleen. I'm sad to hear your grandchildren lost the property, but hopefully your story will prevent somebody else.
This is how you learn, Rob.
Yep.
Your words are right on point.
So under all circumstances, you might want to close by saying, hey, I'm going to be submitting a competitive or a strong offer, and I look forward to working together with you. I can assure you that my client is able and prepared to close, and I'll always do my end and communicate throughout the process. So if we get to work together, that would be great. Look forward to getting my offer. Some positive conversation like that. When you submit the offer, having a well thought out, standard email, which says, hey, my clients, here's their names, here's the offer, purchase price, down payment, willing to waive 20,000 of the appraisal, whatever they're willing to do, their attorney is, their home inspector, closing date, if they're flexible. If you put all that in an email nicely written out, I think that increases your percentage, right? Especially in an environment where you may not know all the agents. And there are a lot of agents that an offer doesn't mean so much unless it closes. You should coach your buyers to win. You should coach your buyers to win and let them know that they might have to do something that's uncomfortable to win. Does that make sense? I mean, if you're going to win in this market, many of the things you need to do to win are uncomfortable, right? Like waiving part of the appraisal, probably uncomfortable. Waiving some of the cosmetic items in a home inspection, probably a bit uncomfortable, right? What are some other uncomfortable things that we've had our clients do in order to win properties? I know you all know, I see what you're doing. I see how good you're responding to this market.
Giving
Well,
post-occupancy.
What is that?
Giving the seller post-occupancy.
Can you explain to some of the agents that may not know what that means?
Okay, what happens is a lot of these sellers haven't purchased a property yet. So, you know, they're a little more difficult to deal with because they're worried about where they're going to go. But if your offer says that your buyer is willing to allow them 60 days in the property, that could be a turning point for you, even more valuable than a little higher offer. And we're seeing listings now coming across the board that say 45 days post-occupancy required, 60 days post-occupancy required.
Sometimes I also see that the seller needs a provision to allow them to find a house, right? A contingency.
Exactly.
So if you're willing to be flexible, you might be able to win that particular offer. You know, Bruce, we had a conversation about a strategy, right? Recently with, was that Shantae?
Yeah, it's so funny though. I had a contract in New York, literally, I think it was earlier this week actually, where it had what was called a reverse contingency, and the realtor was texting me. I'm like, I never heard. It was exactly what you said, that they could cancel the contract if they don't find a house within 30 days. So, and that's what helped this buyer get it. But anyway, I'm sorry, what were you asking?
So we had an agent. I was doing some role playing with her and one of her teammates, and we talked about I think it was a 5% down conventional buyer that was losing out on a lot of transactions, but they had the ability, if it was the difference between winning or losing a house, to put 20% down by borrowing money from their pension. And it turns out that they could still qualify for the mortgage with borrowing from their pension. And now they needed to see if they could change the way that their offer appears to a seller, right?
Yeah, and if they have that, because a lot of folks think, a lot of people don't realize that if they put something down on a contract that they have to do that. So obviously we all know the games that go on when people are making offers and they're not doing that at all anyway. But there are some people that if they have the 401k, they are comfortable doing that because they were, first of all, we could always give them a higher loan amount anyway, but they're able to put 20% down if God forbid they had to from liquidating their 401k or something like that. Yeah.
So
when you use the 401k, a lot of times you have the provision that the interest you pay for the loan goes back to you.
Yeah, that's pretty typical on everyone, actually, Colleen. You're right. Every 401k goes back to you. But we were using it more as a strategy. The buyer really didn't intend to. I mean, he did not intend to, but they were comfortable because sometimes, you know, they want to have the best offer forward, but if they're contractually committed to having to put 20% down if they can by liquidating the 401k, they're kind of cool doing that, but we still approve them for 10% down, you know, it's okay as well. So, or they could just do exactly what you're saying and go in knowing they're going to liquidate the 401k either way. But what's nice is it's a legit, you're not making an offer that's inaccurate. The person can put the 20% down.
So I'm going to ask this to our compliance officer. If there's a property in contract, in attorney review, and the seller and the agent says, Bruce, please don't submit any offers. We're not entertaining offers. And you submit an offer, what has to happen?
It has to be presented.
Yeah, some of us forget about that. So if something's in attorney review or even under contract and you present an offer, the listing agent has to present it in New Jersey. And you
have to go through the attorney.
Well, that's just a way of getting it presented, Ellen. But I mean, it has to be presented to the seller. So if you, and I'm going to give you an education here because I get a lot of my education the old-fashioned way, right? Which is by making mistakes or seeing mistakes. If you're a listing agent, Ellen, and somebody says, hey, I'm going to submit an offer, and you say my sellers want everything to go to their attorney, and you advise the agent presenting the offer to just email it to their attorney, you are in violation of the rule to present it to your client within 24 hours. And we actually had an agent get fined $1,750 for not doing that.
That's interesting and good to know, because then you can ask for the signature on the form that says it's been presented.
Correct. And the facts of ours, Ellen, were very unique, where it was an estate, and the executrix of the estate said, look, we'd like all the offers to go to the attorney, and we're going to review them on next Friday with my sister. And the person that lost the offer made a complaint saying that their offer wasn't presented. And when we gave evidence, we produced evidence that it was given to the seller's attorney. The agent representing the buyer was like, oh, I'm satisfied with that, right? But the board said you violated the rule and you're getting a fine. So you can't change the rules, even if your client says, don't send it to me. You have to say, unfortunately, I have to blind copy you on, or I have to copy you on these offers. And when I send them to your attorney. So.
Rob, can you have Colleen go over how Florida does it, because it's completely different, and especially for the dual licensed agents in New Jersey and Florida, explain how it's done in Florida?
Okay, Colleen.
She's our compliance officer.
She's muted.
Colleen, you're muted. All that incredibly valuable information is going into the ether.
Okay. In Florida, yes, we same thing. We must present all offers, but in our contracts, there is a provision that's in the listing contract that says if the seller accepts an offer, they do not want to entertain any other offers. So that's
Okay.
written right into the listing agreement. However, again, you need to present all offers. In Florida, right now, we have coming soon. They're doing coming soon, like I'm sure they're doing up there. But in the coming soon, you find as soon as you put on coming soon, you're getting offers. And those offers must be presented, even though the property isn't actually been released. In the same scenario, they say, well, we're going to review all the offers on Monday. Reality is, if they got a really good offer on Sunday, that's the offer that's going to be in play, or they're going to use that offer on Monday to get a better price. So it's highly competitive here. We don't have attorney review. We do use an as-is contract. However, it's as-is, subject to inspections. But in this market, a lot of that is being waived, as well as the appraisal. So ours is a little different. The agents really have to do most of the work. We don't have attorneys to intercede for us. So our structure is different. But the basic principles that you're presenting, Rob, apply whether you're in New Jersey or Florida.
Do you have for pocket listings, Colleen, do you have to present all offers for pocket listings? Let's say.
It's in the gray.
Okay.
So
because
Colleen,
really, a pocket listing, it depends if it's executed or if it's just somebody,
so
let's
Colleen,
say, yeah.
Colleen, I'm gonna not go too far off the rails here on that direction, because I really want to get through all the content. We have 21 minutes left. I want to say Eddie shared some valuable information that some listing agents they puff and they will try to mislead you and say, hey, we have lots of offers, like Colleen's, where she thought it was well over asking price. However, her grandchildren would have been the owner of that house if she had submitted that offer. So you need to take into consideration the fact that agents might be having a different agenda, and not everybody is completely truthful.
Absolutely.
Here's where I want to talk about mindset, okay? And all of this stuff is techniques, but mindset matters, right? And you know, the analogy I like is, you know, if you are a ninja agent where you have rapport, you have the ability to influence your clients to make the decision that's in their best interest. Okay, I'm not saying we trick people to make offers that are in our best interest, because those usually fall apart anyway. But if we can communicate and educate them to make offers where they would say, hey, if I would have known that property would have sold for $655, I would have bid that, or I probably would have bid $665, right? So having discussions with clients about, like, where is the point where you would not call me up after it closes and say, hey, Bruce, I wish you would have told me that I could have got it for $660. I would have totally went up another $25,000, right? And then, well, I'm going to guess most of us have had those calls where something's closed and said, I would have went higher. Ron, have you had that in Florida?
Yeah.
And Robert, have you had that in New Jersey? Because I just see you both unmuted. And that's kind of painful, right?
Especially when it's only $112 a month more in mortgage payment. 25
Yeah.
grand.
But
Right.
the
Rob,
problem I'm
this-
coming across is that the appraisal, we're getting beaten by people that can't waive appraisal, the full appraisal. So like some of my clients are only able to do 5 or 10,000. And there are people we're getting outbidded because people can waive appraisals, like complete appraisals. And you know that this house is valued, 60, 70, maybe 80,000 over what it would be appraised for. So people are coming in with cash. So that's the problem I'm coming across.
So Lisa, can you can you give me an example of one that recently came up, just so I can kind of maybe dissect it?
Yeah, my clients put an offer on a townhouse in Edison, and the agent texted me back, thank you for the offer, but the offer was substantially higher. My clients were at a limit, 510,000 was their max. So, we got outbidded. She didn't tell me, but it sounded like it came in at like 525 around there. And they also waived appraisal. They waived all inspection, not just inspection issues, like inspection. And then now we're even, I didn't even think of this. I should have, the buyer's agent's taking care of the CO.
So like some of those things, I don't know if Gary's still on the phone, but some of those things where clients are overzealous and waive things can come back to be problematic. So I'm not gonna suggest that we tell people, hey, waive all home inspection issues.
Yeah.
But I would say, educating them on what waiving the appraisal means to them is probably more valuable than suggesting we just fold and we'll take it as is. Because there is enhanced risk with doing that. Even if we make sure that they are aware of the risk and sign off on it, the risk can still come back to us.
Something people don't realize with that, Rob, is that if you have a 20 or 25% down buyer, a lot of buyers, they may not have the liquidity to waive the appraisal fee. But if you have a 20% down buyer and that house allows them to put as little as 3 or 5% down, what that means is they have 15% value of the appraisal that they can waive. Now, they will be in a PMI category if they did that, but they can waive that much of a percentage. A lot of people don't realize that that's an option for them. Some do, and they may say, well, I don't want to pay PMI, but if they knew that they could compete more on a really hot house that they just love, knowing that they could go, some people putting 25% down and somebody comes in, well, you can waive up to 20% of the appraised value. That's a big deal.
So, Bruce, are you seeing a lot of these competitive situations under appraising? Actually,
Robert just texted me. We had one, it was just his seller that I spoke to for another reason, but no, we're seeing them come in. We're seeing them, there are some that are light. We have one with Trudy right now, actually, that I think is going to be a little light. It's a townhouse, but to my, not only I say to my surprise, but I think the perception of this waiving appraisal is getting ridiculous because we're not seeing them come in low, to your point, Rob. Like it's almost irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but they're they're not coming in anywhere near as low. Like we don't see stuff coming in at all 10% off or even 5% off. We see it getting very close.
And you have to see how much cash the buyer's working with. I mean, if they're limited with their cash, waiving an appraisal could be dangerous, so.
Well, that's why I put a limit on it up to 5,000 or up to 7,000.
Yeah.
But you have people coming in waiving it altogether. And, I guess, because the bidding war is going up so high, agents are telling their sellers, hey, look, we have, you don't have to worry about it not, it not appraising because, I have somebody that has cash to, to compensate. So that's tough.
Lisa, I don't know that in that circumstance that there's a lot of opportunity you could have done differently. Okay, but if you work with a lot of, if your mix of buyers, you have 10 buyers and one or two.
Yeah, and I just got an offer accepted because she was willing to waive appraisal and inspection, and she's going in. She bought a little condo in Scotch Plains. It was, under 300,000, and she's putting over 150,000 down, and no appraisal, 30-day closing, and they're like, yeah, you're in. So.
So if you have 1 or 2 out of 10 that you're working with, Lisa, then that's just a normal distribution. If you have 7 out of your 10 buyers that are in that low down payment and have no other resources to put more money down, then you probably need to change up your mix a little bit of your buyers. Okay. Yeah. And right now, honestly, like if somebody's in that situation and they they want to move forward, maybe they have a car that they can too much money that it's not worth. Maybe there's some opportunity that they have that's not comfortable, but it's doable, right? If you have 2 expensive cars, right, that are paid off, and you want to buy a house and you only have 3% down, well, guess what? Maybe you sell a car, you come up with the extra money, and then you go and you lease a car or you share a car now. I mean, there are different ways that I've seen people accomplish this.
So Rob, I wanted to mention something too, if I could, because I think it's poignant in this discussion now. I had sellers who accepted a high offer on the house, and they were concerned about the appraisal. And the buyers agreed to waive the appraisal. My sellers were very nervous. So I actually had them speak to Bruce Oliver, who was able to discuss this whole procedure with them and point out to them what they should be looking for to kind of put their mind at ease, whether it be proof of funds from the buyers that they were going to be able to cover a shortfall should it exist up to a certain amount, which we felt really comfortable with. Having Bruce explain the whole process to them, they really, took a deep breath and he said, okay, let's go for it. And as luck would have it, we just had that appraisal done yesterday, and I was speaking with the appraiser who volunteered to me that the house was going to fully appraise, so that it wasn't even an issue in the end. But the conversation with Bruce made it a deal that my sellers were comfortable taking.
And this is not a shameless plug for Bruce or Betterway or any of our preferred lenders. Many of you have lenders that you have trust in. If you have a lender that you can ask them, hey, are you seeing properties under appraised in this area? That gives you an additional layer of conversation to have. Okay. And Bruce, if something does under appraise and we can contest it, is there a pathway to do that? And does that ever work?
There's definitely a pathway. I mean, it depends on, if I'm answering it for us versus, and I'm assuming Better would have the same thing, or then even other people that aren't, like a Wells Fargo, it depends who the lender is. It depends how difficult that could be. But the way that we operate, and I'm sure your other partners operate, is we have people on our panels that are appraisers that we put on our panels. And, so for the most part, they're people we're comfortable with. So they're going to try real hard to get the number anyway, because they understand. But we could always submit a rebuttal, and we could always try to get the value up. But in a purchase transaction, all the appraisers know right now to really try to, to do everything they can. And we do have some success sometimes, but sometimes what we have to do is we have to maybe wait for a comp to close, and then we do a new inspection date and things like that. But I think Lorraine hit such an important point with buyers with this. They don't really even understand what waiving appraisal is. First of all, if you're obtaining a mortgage, you can't waive an appraisal. You're waiving value. And I think when you explain it to the people and that you could still give them mortgage financing if the value doesn't come in, you can't do it when they're putting a minimal amount down. But when they're put a little more down, there are options for them. And I've never in my career, and I've been doing this I had hair, like, Rob had hair too back when, but I had hair when I started. And I've never in my career been speaking to, I have an offer that's going out right now where I have to call a listing agent. I've just never had that kind of, and I think it really helps, never had that kind of connection or dialogue with the listing agents. And because to me, I think there's so much BS going on with these offers as well. This concern about appraised value when it really doesn't need to be, because the realtor knows that he or she listed the property below market anyway, right? Or maybe some other person that has a pre-approval letter that says they're putting X amount down, but they didn't ask for proof of liquidity. There's a lot of ways for the lender to help you just edify your offer and edify that it's a team and it's a collaboration. And it still doesn't work all the time, but it does make a difference, I believe. And I've had actually sellers get on the phone with the listing agent. They've conferenced them in, and I'm like, oh my God, you can't share too much information about your buyer, but you really can help them feel confident that you as a real estate professional got it. But then the extension of you, the lender helping their buyer, has it. And I think that's something that, it doesn't hurt. And we're more than happy to do it because just like you, we're pre-approving all these buyers too. We want the transactions to go together. So if we have something we feel needs to be said, we'd be happy to help you do. I'm sure I speak for every lender. Certainly People's Finance of America and Better Way. I'm sure they do the same as well.
So Bruce, the other night you helped one of our agents. I don't know if they ultimately went with you. I don't believe they did, but we talked about a strategy. They were wanting to go 5% down. We said, could you come up with 20% down if you had to? They said they could. We explained to them that if the property doesn't appraise, it's not like they lose that money, because we actually showed them that their payment would be less, right? So there was a benefit to putting more money down. They wound up waiving $40,000, which was 10% of a 440 purchase. They wound up, instead of putting 5% down, they put 20% down on the contract. When it went into attorney review, the attorney said if it does appraise, they want to have the ability to borrow as much as $418,000, which was 95% of it, and that worked out. And the agent felt that this was deceptive and misleading. And I said, look, if they can do it, if they had to, it's not deceptive and misleading. If they have the ability to lower the down payment and still close, I think that there's a transparent conversation that can be had there, right, Bruce?
If I'm being real, I don't disagree. There can be, but to me, from my seat, if the borrower is committing to a contract where they say they're willing to put 20% down, they have the ability to do it. I don't need an addendum any longer if they choose to put 10% down. So to me, I think it's a better conversation to either have after it's approved, or it's a better conversation to have. You don't even have to have it. You just go to closing with more financing, and it doesn't matter. But that's just my opinion, because I do think it upsets the listing agent, because then they feel the buyer's agent was, kind of playing games. But whatever.
What's the difference though? It's all green at the end of the day.
I agree. Thank you, Ellen. And I tell the buyers that, I say, listen, unless we need an addendum, which on FHA loans, certain loans, you may need an addendum change. You don't need an addendum. If you're choosing, I could, I've said I was buying houses all cash, no contingency. I still got a mortgage, did an appraisal, but as long as it's there at the end, they don't care. What you're doing is you're committing to the contract that way. Now, if I couldn't get them a loan with 5% down and they were denied, but I could have with 20, well, then there's some liability there. But in my opinion, I usually don't bring it up. That's just my opinion. I don't mean to go against the grain on what you're saying, but that's what
that's completely with the grain. Like if somebody worst case can do it, right, and then it's preferable for them to put less down, as long as they produce and provide the Ellen Falk green at the closing, it's all good. So some of
Rob, I got a question. Excuse me. That happened to me, and actually it was my client who was a buyer. And when I got the commitment letter, I realized that the down payment amounts were different, and it was just something she had a conversation with her attorney about. Now the seller's agent never said anything, so I everything went smoothly. She closed. She had the money to close at the higher down payment as well as the lower one, But I felt like it was a little bit of a bait and switch because of what we have put down in the contract. So am I hearing that as long as you can get the commitment and close, it may not be?
So Kelly, it not only will it may not be, but if they put it down at 20 or 30% down to get it accepted, and the lender verified that they had the ability to do that, right? Maybe it was uncomfortable. It was more comfortable to do 10% down. What we're saying is not maybe, it's definitely not a conflict as long as they can perform and close on the prescribed date and time. Now, what Bruce said, which is huge, is if they do that and then they get declined for 5% down, they're not going to have a mortgage contingency unless they get declined at what was on the contract.
Yeah, Kelly, the integrity piece of it, in my view, is if they can do the 20, but they choose not to, that's different than if you're saying they're going to do 20 and they can't. So that's just my own moral compass with that. So if I could say to them, hey, you could get a gift, you could do this, you could do that. Well, my mother really, or my dad really doesn't want to help or what? Well, that's fine. So if I could contractually get you to commit to 20%, but I can approve you with 5%, it shouldn't matter. But if I say I can't approve you with 5%, but I can with 20%, well, now you have an integrity issue to the seller, but those aren't the ones that I would recommend you do that on. It does happen out there, but it's a different thing.
Okay. Now
somebody just said in the chat, Rob, that they had an issue with a bait and switch with an FHA, and I want to personally address that because I had that happen with one of my buyers. They were 20%, and they decided that the house actually overappraised, and they wanted to use as much money as possible. He's a shrewd businessman, and he wanted to use an FHA loan, use the overappraised value to buy down the rate, and because everything worked out better in the end. And we said FHA will take care of any FHA issues that come up on the inspection. We'll make sure it gets taken care of, and we'll pay for it. And in the end, it worked out beautifully because it made the listing agent look better because they got a higher, on the MLS anyway, they got a higher sale price. The sellers ended up getting their numbers that they agreed to in the end. It didn't affect them in any way. The reality was that the house was in good shape, so there were no inspection issues, but there was really open communication, and they ended up, and it wasn't a cheap house. It was in the $650 range. And everybody worked out, it was transparent also. So
Ellen, the thing that you said there was communication, right? You communicated along the way, and you didn't just have an addendum sent out overnight. So I think that's what really matters. We're cutting down to the end, so I'm going to try to get through my stuff, and then I'll take some more questions, or we can have some more dialogue later. If I were making an offer on, Bruce Oliver's list, personal home, and I made you an offer, Bruce, of $800,000 with 5% down, waiving the appraisal, or waiving 10,000 of the appraisal, or I made an offer to you of $785,000, $15,000 less. I was putting down 35% and was only asking for the property to appraise for $690. Which offer would you accept?
Depends what the house is worth. If it's worth 900, I wouldn't take either one. But if it was worth 850, I'd take the 5% down and get the extra money.
You would take the extra money.
Well, again, if I knew what the value was. The fear is these people don't know, everything's going over full. Nobody knows. I think it's silly.
So I think the question, I asked it to the wrong person because you haven't seen any under appraisals. But if you were a seller and you think, what if this under appraises, or what if they're putting a lower down payment? It would be reasonable. You wouldn't think somebody was insane.
I would definitely take the other offer then, yes.
You wouldn't think somebody was insane if they took 785 over 800 because the appraisal was gone and there was a lot more money down. You felt more comfortable. So the point of this brief discussion is that you can have price, you can have terms, but you seldom have both, and that's for both buyers and sellers. So we can accept the best price, or we can accept the best terms, but they're rarely the same. So it might mean, hey, I'm going to accept that 785 instead of the 800, less appraisal risk. Plus, they're willing to let me stay in the house for up to 2 months. If you know what I mean, there could be a lot of terms there that lead you to accept a lower offer. And I think that we don't have that discussion with our clients enough, especially our buyers. And when I was working on the one where we called you, Bruce, there was a new agent that was in the room with that conversation. We did this little role play, and I said, David, if we give you this offer for, you know, 420, and we're only waiving 10,000, and somebody else makes an offer of 400, and they're willing to waive 50,000 of the appraisal, they're putting down 20%, we're putting down 5, you know, which offer would you accept? You know, and he was like, I'll take the 420 because it's a sure thing. I'm not going to take a risk that way I get the extra money, because if it doesn't appraise, they're putting a lower down payment. So it was really interesting to see if you put a mock client in the scenario of asking them questions. If you were the seller, how would you behave? We're putting our clients in better positions to win in the negotiating game. Discuss staging themselves to attract a contract, right? So that's putting 20 or 25 or 30% down. That's waiving part of the appraisal. That's staging yourself as a buyer. We're all familiar with staging as a seller. Let's stage as a buyer. Putting more money down is part of the buyer staging, or putting more in total. More earnest money down, more total money down. You know, we talked about, are they willing to waive a portion of the appraisal? A lot of conversation about that. Home inspections, you know, I'm not sure. I would say if somebody wants you to waive the home inspections, right, if that's a big deal, what signal is that telling you? You know, I'm going to go back to you, Kelly. If the seller is like, hey, if they waive the appraisal, that'll be really important to my seller.
Appraisal or
I
inspection?
mean, if they waive the home inspection, you know, that might, you know, if you came in at 550, but they waived all the inspection items.
So I think that means they think there's some things there that are gonna pop.
Bingo.
That's how I would take it.
Yes.
Yeah, see, I let my clients waive inspection because it was a little condo and it was immaculate. So I didn't worry for her. And she also, you know, she agreed. So that's why we went with, and that's why they chose her. So
Right. But I mean, but Lisa, like the thing is, if somebody's saying, hey, you know, your offer is competitive, but if you waive all the inspection items, I'd be thinking to myself, whoa, maybe there's something that we don't know about here, right? So I just want you to be aware of that. Okay. I don't want to get hung up on this.
yeah, no, I understand. Like I said,
if you waive part of the items, or if you really wanted to be ambitious, right? Say, hey, look, we'll waive the first $10,000 of inspection items, right? But then if there's like a septic that needs to be replaced, we're still covered, right?
yeah.
You know, can they be flexible on closing dates and occupancy? We talked about the occupancy, but closing date as well, right? And when we submit an offer, we need to, you know, again, reinforce and build trust and rapport with that seller's agent, the listing agent. I think that's really, really important. You know, in this day and age where there's 3, 4, 20 offers on a property, you know, a lot of times we just send an email, or when we're a listing agent, we just get emails without any context behind them. Okay, to me, that's kind of not serving our client at the highest level. And having a winning attitude, I think, trumps everything that we put here. Because if I was up against 16 offers, right, I would feel like I've got a really good shot at winning that, because I'm going to use all the resources and tools in my toolbox to let my client make the right decision, right? And if I'm going to make the offer, I really feel we got to be competitive. That makes sense? And that goes to mindset as well, right? Because if you look at it, you say, hey, there's, Fazia, there's 19 offers on this property here. I don't want you to get your hopes up, right? That's going to be a negative. That's going to start out with a negative. We don't want to falsely mislead, but we say, hey, there's 19 offers. Fazia, what do we have to do to get our offer accepted, right? And we talk about the things that they can do. We talk about what's in our toolbox. We talk about what uncomfortable things they can tolerate, right? Because to Colleen's point, you know, in that scenario, if her grandchildren knew that they could have had it for $550 instead of, you know, they thought that it was going to go over $560, they would have made that bid. So
Rob, To piggyback on what you said about having the conversation with the listing agent, I did with that particular agent, and I did tell him, and he said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I said, "Well, now you have a ready and willing, able buyer. Please go out and see if you can get something for us." And each week he calls me with something else. So, and he hasn't put on the market yet. So I mean, you build rapport, you can make a friend.
Right. But I mean, your grandchildren would have been happier if they would have got that property and got, they would have got a little bit more uncomfortable. And,
absolutely.
And having the conversation about, Colleen, there's some things, Colleen and Fazio, there's some things that are going to be uncomfortable that we're going to have to make decisions on that may be the difference between us not getting a house. I want to talk to you about what we can do to give ourselves an advantage in negotiating.
I absolutely agree. You have to set up the expectation and the upfront, and how you deliver it is the key.
Yep. So communication, I think we had Ellen Falk share that communication saved the day on hers. I think communication is absolutely critical. And when I see a great house and I see a client of Remax Select wants it, it just motivates me to find ways to give them all the tools and resources to make the decision that's right for them, right? And absent education, resources, and tools, they're going to make the decision where they're not going to go as high, or they're not going to get as comfortable as they otherwise would have. And then they're going to have that regret call saying, wow, if I would have known, if I would have just waived this, or if I would have, let them stay in it for 2 months, that was the big difference. I mean, they took an offer 30,000 less than mine. Colleen, how come you didn't tell me that if I would have let them stay there for just 2 months, I could have been the owner there, right? So those are things that we have to get over, and they're uncomfortable. And having a conversation about whoever said somebody had 2 boats, a truck, and 4 cars, maybe sell something, come up with more money. I hate to say it, but sometimes people don't think about it, right? Well, that was you, Ron, right?
It was Ron.
Ron, that was your client, right? So maybe they weren't even thinking about that. They just need a big property where they can store all their toys, right? But if they sold one of their toys and then they bought it back in a year or two, they'd have the house of their dreams. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any other questions, let me know. When this recording gets posted, I'm going to put the.
Rob, I had one
question.
All right. Well, I'm staying for questions. If you want to, I know we're over time, but I'll stay on. Go ahead, Ellen.
I just had one comment to make regarding like mindset. And I think one of the things that has helped me get my buyers past some hurdles, I always tell them, like, you have to think about, what would I pay for it? Not what can I get it for? And if it were this, would you pay that? Would you, if you could get it at this number, would you? And because it becomes about, it is uncomfortable, but if they know that they were able to get it at a certain number, and like the statistics and everything are all good if you can back it up after they say that. But, like I found that throwing in too much data, it's an emotional choice. So they have to change their own mindset to be able to get their head around quote unquote overpaying. It's just because most of these 99.9% have been appraising, and that's what my experience has been. So anyway.
Which means they're not overpaying, to your point. I agree. When people are looking at it like they're overpaying, they're not overpaying. It's the way that the market is. If there's many people want to buy it, they're not overpaying.
So Ellen, you brought up you tripped something in my mind, which is the use of an escalation clause, or even if you don't use an escalation clause, the mindset behind it. So if you use the escalation clause, Ellen, and somebody was, hey, I want to make an offer of 675, and I went to you and I said, Ellen, this is not going to happen. But if I was able to look at all the offers and tell you that there was an offer of 705, would you bid 706 to get it? Right? And then you say
exactly. And the other thing is, nobody says that this actually has to be a silent auction. If the sellers say it's okay to reveal the numbers, they can reveal the numbers. These agents that say, oh, I can't tell you, that's baloney. They can if their seller says it's okay also.
But most of the time, Ellen, they're not going to tell us.
They're not.
Okay. Most of the time, they're not going to tell us, but we can go and say, hey, if we knew, and in all likelihood we're not, if we knew there was an offer for 700, would you offer 701? And they
Then
would
go
say,
in
well,
at 701, and that's the key.
correct. Like what you're saying is if they were
I'm
willing
gonna
to
get
do
the
that,
opportunity to use the escalation clause 9 times out of 10.
correct. And if we said, hey, look, if we put and maybe since we know most properties aren't under appraising, said, hey, if we had a contingency that if it appraised for more than 20,000 below the price, that we would have the ability to renegotiate or cancel. Would that make you feel comfortable, Ellen? Great. So I feel like I've done my job at educating you, and I feel like we're going to get more offers accepted. I know there was another question that I interrupted somebody. Go ahead.
Hi, Rob. I had a question. When MLS says as is condition, can you do the inspection?
When that you put it in the contract, yes.
Okay.
It would be something that would be if they said, hey, it's whereas as is, no, you can do an inspection for informational purposes only. Then you can say, I'm going to do my inspection. If I don't like it, I can cancel. That would be a negotiated item. Any other questions?
I have a question about when you put in the offer, you know, that it's structural, environmental, termites only. Is it kind of a gray area? I mean, well, for instance, I recently put an offer with that. Our offer was accepted. Then we saw that the garage doors were kind of rotted out on the bottom, and the seller said no to that. They did fix something like on the electrical panel. So just kind of, can you just clarify, or is that kind of a gray area, or is it real simple?
So Lorraine, I would say if I were a seller or I was representing a buyer and it was structural, mechanical, and environmental, okay, and there were rotted out garage doors on the bottom, I would think that that would be something that you'd probably be waiving.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I'm not sure that that's a whole lot of gray area there.
Okay. Because it's not really structural.
No, it's usually health, environmental, which would be sometimes health, structural, environmental, safety. Because sometimes safety could be electrical, but if it's a GFI, it's like, it is what it is.
Right. Yeah. So you have to think of it more in those terms, health, safety. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I would say, you know, most safety conditions are either structural or mechanical, and, you know, not having a railing might be a structural defect that it needs to be cured. But look, we might be splitting hairs. Any other categories of questions that you have before we wrap it up?
Rob, can I mention the event that we're doing for you guys, for everybody on the 6th, or would you rather you do that in an email?
No, can you post it on here, and I'll also send it out. I'll send it out, Bruce.
Yeah, I have we have it's a speaker who's, we're hosting a virtual event. His name is Barry Habib. He's recently named America's top real estate forecaster by Zillow and Pulsenomics. He's ready to discuss what's going on in the housing market and navigating with the changing market and things of that nature. It's probably going to be about an hour and 20 minutes. It's April 6th at 1 p.m. I will put a link up for you guys to register. It's free. You know, I just think it'd be real insightful to kind of tell you where rates are going. I mean, he's got a lot of insight, and if anything, I hear some of the themes here, just being able to educate and have dialogue, getting the people to trust you, and you can influence them. That was our topic a few weeks ago. The more value we can provide, this is going to be valuable. So hopefully you guys can hop on, and we'd love you to hop on.
All right. Thanks for sharing that, Bruce. I know that's not without expense to your organization. Any other questions before we close it up? So my closing comment is, you know, your mindset and your belief has a lot of influence in how the transaction goes. Okay. And if you believe that you can get through it and you have quality communication and integrity, you'll win more times than you lose. Okay. And if there's 19 offers and you call and you do everything that you can do, I'm betting on you. I am betting on you. I'm betting on you against, if you gave me 19 others and you're the 20th person, you're doing it right, I think you have a better chance than all 19 combined. That's what I'm leaving you with. Have a fantastic weekend. And if you have any questions at all, go through your leadership or contact me. I can help you out. And I don't think we lean on our leadership team locally enough to get second opinion. So please, you know, tap your manager's shoulder, say, hey, you know, can I bounce something off you? Let me get some ideas. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Great, Rob. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.